The research station Gentle Whisper had been floating in the Corhan Nebula for almost 3 years. It was a peaceful place where Velari scientists studied the strange gases and lights of the nebula. The Velari were a gentle species with thin bodies, 4 arms, and skin so clear you could almost see through it. They were not fighters. They had no weapons. They had come to this quiet corner of space to learn and discover. Commander Tylus stood at the main window of the station, watching the purple and blue clouds of the nebula swirl slowly in the darkness. She had spent most of her adult life here, leading a team of 1,200 researchers and their families. Children played in the lower levels. Scientists argued about their findings in the labs. It was a good life, a quiet life. Then the alarm started screaming. Tylus ran to the command center, her 4 arms helping her move quickly through the narrow corridors. When she arrived, her officers were already at their stations, their faces pale with fear. On the main screen, she saw 5 ships dropping out of hyperspace. They were ugly vessels, covered in weapons and armor. She recognized them immediately. Creth raiders. The Creth were everything the Velari were not. They were large, covered in thick scales, with claws and teeth built for killing. They traveled the galaxy, taking what they wanted from those too weak to stop them. And the Velari were very, very weak. "They are hailing us," said one of her officers, his voice shaking. "Put it through," Tylus replied, trying to keep her own voice steady. The face that appeared on the screen made her want to run and hide. The Creth commander was massive, with scars running across his face and eyes that held no kindness at all. His name, she would later learn, was Vorkith. "Velari Station," Vorkith said, his voice like rocks grinding together. "You will prepare to be boarded. You will give us all your supplies, your fuel, and your technology. If you resist, we will kill everyone aboard. You have 1 hour." The screen went dark. Tylus felt her hearts pounding in her chest. The Velari had 2 hearts, and both of them were beating so fast she thought they might burst. Around her, officers began to cry. Some fell to their knees. They all knew there was no way to fight. The station had no weapons. They could not run. They could only wait to die. But Tylus was a commander, and she would not give up without trying something. "Send a distress signal," she ordered. "Send it on every frequency. Send it everywhere. Someone might hear us. Someone might come." Her communications officer looked at her with sad eyes. "Commander, even if someone hears us, no one will come. The Creth have 5 warships. No one would risk their lives for us. We are not important enough." Tylus knew he was probably right. The Velari had no powerful friends. They had no military allies. They were just scientists far from home, alone in the dark. "Send it anyway," she said quietly. The signal went out into the void. A desperate cry for help that no one was expected to answer. 6 hours away. At the edge of Terran space, a ship called the Starfall was on routine patrol. It was not a large ship or a famous one. It was just a cruiser doing its job, watching the borders and keeping the peace. The crew was small, maybe 80 people. All of them human. Lieutenant Commander Kyle Bennett was sitting in his captain's chair, drinking coffee and reading reports when Ensign Maria Vega sat up straight at her communication station. "Sir," she said, "we are picking up a distress signal." Bennett put down his coffee. "What kind of distress signal?" "A Velari research station. They say they are under attack by Creth raiders. 5 ships. They are asking for any available help." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. 5 Creth warships against 1 Terran cruiser was not a fight. It was suicide. The smart thing to do was to report the signal and keep moving. Let someone else handle it. Let someone with more ships, more guns, more people deal with the problem. Bennett looked around his bridge. He saw Maria Vega, young and scared but trying not to show it. He saw Danny Reyes at the weapons station, a man who had been in the service for 20 years and had seen more fights than he could count. He saw Amy Cho at Tactical, already running calculations on her screen. How long to reach them? Bennett asked. 6 hours at maximum speed, Amy replied. But sir, even if we push the engines as hard as they can go, we will arrive alone. There is no backup. There is no fleet. It will just be us. Bennett nodded slowly. He thought about the Velari on that station. He had never met a Velari in person, but he knew about them. They were fragile creatures from a world with low gravity and thin air. To them, humans were terrifying monsters from a death world, a planet where everything was trying to kill you. Earth had high gravity, dangerous animals, poisonous plants, violent weather, and diseases that would destroy most alien species in hours. The galaxy called humans Deathworlders. Most species were afraid of them, but those Velari had sent the distress call. They'd have asked for help. And Kyle Bennett had heard it. "Sound general quarters," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Set course for the Corhan Nebula. Maximum speed." Maria Vega stared at him. "Sir, are you sure?" "We are only one ship." Bennett stood up from his chair. He was not a tall man or a particularly strong one. He did not look like a hero from a story. He looked like what he was, a tired officer who had been doing this job for 15 years. But when he spoke, his crew listened. "Those people sent a call for help," he said. "They are scared and alone, and they think no one is coming. They think no one cares enough to try. I will not prove them right. I will not sit here drinking coffee while 1,200 innocent people die. We are going." He looked around at his crew, meeting each of their eyes. "I am not ordering anyone to come with me. If you want to leave, I will understand. But I'm going to that station, and I'm going to do everything I can to save those people. Because that is what we do. That is who we are." No one moved. No one asked to leave. Danny Reyes cracked his knuckles and turned back to his weapons console. "Well then," he said with a small smile, "let us go introduce ourselves to some Kreth." The Starfall turned toward the nebula and began to fly. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez pushed the reactor harder than it was designed to go. In the cargo bay, Sergeant Nicole Grant gathered her Marines and began preparing for the worst. Throughout the ship, men and women checked their weapons, said quiet prayers, and wrote messages to their families. 6 hours away, the Velari waited to die. They did not know that help was coming. They did not know that somewhere in the darkness, a single ship full of Deathworlders had heard their cry and decided that the odds did not matter. The risk did not matter. The only thing that mattered was that someone needed help, and humans always answered. Admiral Catherine Cole had served in the Terran Navy for 32 years. She had commanded ships in 4 major conflicts and countless smaller engagements. She had buried friends and sent letters to widows. She had made decisions that cost lives and decisions that saved them. Through all of it, she had learned one simple truth about war. Speed mattered more than almost anything else. The side that moved first usually won. She stood in the command center of Terran Station Alpha, watching her staff work. Screens showed the positions of every human military vessel within range. Communications officers were sending coded signals to ships across 3 sectors. Logistics teams were calculating fuel requirements and ammunition stocks. It was a machine built for one purpose, and now it was waking up. Her second-in-command, Commander Paul Fisher, approached with a tablet in his hands. He was a younger man, still in his 40s, with the kind of calm face that never showed stress, even when everything was falling apart. "We have confirmation from 14 capital ships," he said. "The carrier Valiant is already moving. The battlecruiser Ironclad will be ready within the hour. We're pulling in everything we can from the outer patrol routes. What about ground forces? Cole asked. 2 Marine battalions are loading onto transport ships right now. If the situation requires surface operations, we'll have boots on the ground within hours of arrival. Cole nodded. It was happening fast, faster than any other species in the galaxy could manage. Humans had learned long ago that preparation was the key to victory. They kept their fleets ready. They trained constantly. They'd planned for scenarios that other species considered impossible. Across human space, ships were coming to life. The carrier Valiant, a massive vessel that could launch 300 fighters, was already pushing toward the jump point. Captain Marcus Bell stood on its bridge, watching his crew move with the precision of a well-tuned machine. Bell was a quiet man who rarely raised his voice. He didn't need to. His reputation spoke for him. He had never lost a ship under his command, and he had never left anyone behind. On the battlecruiser Ironclad, Commander Lisa Grant was running final checks on her weapons systems. Grant was younger than most ship commanders, just past 35, but she had earned her position through skill and courage. Her crew loved her because she fought alongside them instead of hiding behind them. Her enemies feared her because she never showed mercy in battle. Destroyers and frigates gathered around the larger vessels like wolves forming a pack. Support ships loaded medical supplies and repair equipment. Fuel tankers topped off every tank. The entire fleet was preparing to jump into unknown territory against an unknown enemy to save a species they had never met. Back on the Sahara Prime, the Galactic Assembly was still in session. Delegates argued about jurisdiction and protocol. Legal experts debated whether intervention was permitted under existing treaties. Some species wanted to negotiate with the attackers. Others wanted to wait and gather more information. A few suggested that the Iridani situation was tragic, but not their concern. Ambassador Corvith listened to the debates with growing frustration. He had watched the human ship jump away hours ago. He had seen the determination in Captain Brooks' eyes. And now he watched his fellow diplomats talk in circles while innocent people died. Velani colleague approached him during a recess. "You seem troubled," she said. "I am," Corvith admitted. "The humans have already gone to help the Iridani. They didn't wait for our permission. They didn't ask for our approval. They simply went." "That is irresponsible," his colleague said. "They could make the situation worse. They could start a larger war. They should have consulted with us first." Corvith shook his head slowly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps they understood something we have forgotten. That sometimes waiting is the worst choice of all." He excused himself and walked to the observation deck. Through the wide windows, he could see the stars, cold and distant. Somewhere out there, humans were racing toward danger to save strangers. It was foolish by any rational calculation. The risks were enormous. The benefits were uncertain. And yet they went anyway. The more Corvith thought about it, the more he realized that this was what made humans different. They didn't calculate suffering the way other species did. They didn't weigh lives on a scale and choose the optimal outcome. When they saw pain, they tried to stop it. When they heard screaming, they tried to help. It was instinct, not logic. Admiral Cole watched the fleet come together on her tactical display. 47 combat vessels, 12 support ships, 8,000 sailors and Marines. All of them volunteers, all of them knowing they might not come back. She opened the channel to the entire fleet. Her voice was calm and steady, the voice of someone who had done this before. "All ships, this is Admiral Cole. In a few minutes, we will jump to the Iridani system. Intelligence is limited. We know the enemy has significant forces and orbital bombardment capability. We know they are actively killing civilians. We do not know their full strength or their intentions." She paused, letting the words sink in. "What we do know is this: someone called for help. They called into the darkness, hoping that anyone would answer. We are going to answer. We are going to show the galaxy what it means to have humanity as a friend. We are going to save every life we can, and we are going to make the enemy regret the day they chose to prey on the innocent. Another pause. I won't lie to you. Some of us will not come home. This is the price we pay for being who we are. But I promise you this. Every death will mean something. Every sacrifice will matter. When this is over, the Iridani will rebuild their world because we gave them the chance. And the next species that thinks about attacking the helpless will remember what happened here and think twice. She straightened her shoulders. Fleet jump in 5 minutes. Good luck and good hunting. Call out. The channel closed. Across the fleet, men and women made their final preparations. Some wrote quick messages to loved ones. Some checked their weapons one more time. Some simply sat in silence and tried to find peace. And then the jump drives engaged, and the fleet vanished into hyperspace. A storm of steel and fire racing across the galaxy to answer a stranger's cry for help. On the Sar Prime, the Galactic Assembly finally reached a decision. They would send a diplomatic envoy to assess the situation. The motion passed with a comfortable majority. Ambassador Corvith voted against it, knowing it was pointless. By the time their envoy arrived, the humans would have already decided the outcome. For better or worse, humanity had chosen to act, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Daniel Brooks brought the constellation out of hyperspace at the edge of the Iridani system. What he saw made his blood turn cold. The planet was burning. Great columns of smoke rose from the surface, visible even from orbit. Debris fields floated where defense stations had once stood. Small craft moved between the wreckage like vultures picking at a corpse. And everywhere, there were enemy ships. Brooks counted 47 vessels of various sizes. The largest were massive carriers that spewed fighters like angry insects. The smallest were fast attack craft that darted between the larger ships on patrol routes. In the center of the formation, 3 enormous vessels hung in low orbit. These were the harvesting ships. Their holds were filling with the shattered remains of Iridani citizens. Get me a full sensor sweep, Brooks ordered. I want to know everything about those ships. Weapons, shields, engine signatures, communication frequencies, everything. His sensor officer, a young man named Kevin Park, worked quickly. Data flowed across his screen. Sir, the enemy vessels appear to be using technology similar to ours, maybe slightly less advanced. Their shields are strong but not impenetrable. Their weapons are mostly energy-based, with some kinetic options. Any identification? Yes, sir. Their communications are in the clear. They call themselves the Kethrani Dominion. They seem to believe no one is coming to help the Iridani. Brooks smiled grimly. They're about to learn differently. Send all this data to Admiral Cole. Priority transmission. The message went out at faster than light speed, racing toward the incoming fleet. Brooks knew they would arrive within hours. Until then, he had to watch and wait and document the horror unfolding below. On the surface of the Iridani homeworld, the situation was worse than he could have imagined. The Kethrani ground forces moved through cities without opposition. The Iridani had no weapons, no soldiers, no way to fight back. They could only run and hide and hope for rescue that they believed would never come. The Kethrani were methodical in their cruelty. They rounded up Iridani by the thousands and loaded them onto transport ships. Those who resisted were shattered on the spot, their crystalline bodies cracking and falling to the ground in glittering pieces. Those who cooperated were taken to processing facilities where machines broke them apart more carefully, extracting the rare minerals that made their bodies valuable. It was not war. It was harvest. Admiral Cole received Brooks' transmission and studied the tactical data with cold eyes. The enemy was strong, but not overwhelmingly so. They had numbers, but they had grown complacent. They weren't expecting a fight. All ships, this is the Admiral. We're jumping in hot. Attack Formation Delta. Priority targets are the harvesting vessels in low orbit. We stop the killing first, then we deal with the rest. The fleet emerged from hyperspace like thunder from a clear sky. 47 human warships appeared in perfect formation, their weapons already charged and targeting. The Kethrani had no warning. One moment they were conducting their harvest in peace. The next moment the sky was full of fire. The carrier Valiant launched its fighters in a single massive wave. 300 small craft screamed toward the enemy formation, their pilots eager for battle. Captain Marcus Bell coordinated the attack from his bridge, his calm voice guiding his forces with precision. Alpha Squadron, target the patrol craft on the left flank. Beta Squadron, punch through to the harvesting ships. Everyone else, find a target and make it count. The fighters hit the Kethrani formation like a hammer hitting glass. Enemy patrol craft exploded in balls of fire. Defensive screens flickered and failed. The Kethrani commanders screamed orders, but their crews were too slow, too unprepared for an enemy that fought like this. Commander Lisa Grant brought the ironclad into close range with a Kethrani destroyer. Her ship was smaller, but her crew was better. They poured fire into the enemy shields until they collapsed, then targeted the engine section. The destroyer went dark, spinning helplessly through space. "That one's trying to run," her weapons officer reported, pointing to a Kethrani cruiser that was breaking formation. Grant's eyes narrowed. "No one runs. Ram them if you have to." The ironclad accelerated hard, closing the distance before the cruiser could escape. At the last moment, Grant ordered a turn and fired every weapon she had directly into the enemy's hull. The cruiser broke apart, its remains tumbling toward the planet below. Admiral Cole watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. The Kethrani were fighting back now, their initial shock wearing off. Human ships were taking damage. Fighters were being shot down. But the tide was clearly turning. "Focus on the harvesting vessels," she ordered. "Every minute they operate, more Iridani die." Captain Brooks brought the Constellation into the heart of the battle, his smaller ship weaving between larger combatants. He targeted a harvesting vessel's engines and fired, crippling it before it could escape. The Kethrani commander tried to open a communication channel. "Unknown vessels, we demand you cease your attack. This system is under Dominion control. Your interference is an act of war." Cole answered him personally. "This is Admiral Catherine Cole of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are conducting genocide against a peaceful species. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. There will be no negotiation." The channel went dead. The Kethrani had no interest in surrender, and neither did she. On the surface, Lieutenant Amy Norton led the first wave of marine transports down through the burning atmosphere. Norton was 30 years old, a veteran of ground combat on 3 different worlds. She had seen bad situations before. This was worse. Her transport touched down in the ruins of an Iridani city. Crystalline buildings lay shattered all around. Bodies were everywhere, glittering fragments of what had once been living beings. And in the distance, Kethrani ground troops were still hunting survivors. "All units, spread out and establish a perimeter," Norton ordered. "Find survivors and bring them to the landing zone. Engage any enemy forces on site." Her Marines moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for exactly this kind of operation. Search and rescue in hostile territory. Protect civilians at all costs. The first Iridani they found was huddled in the basement of a collapsed building. It was a young one, its crystalline body still small and growing. It looked up at the armored humans with something that might have been fear. Norton knelt down and removed her helmet so the Iridani could see her face. "It's okay," she said softly. "We're here to help. You're safe now." The young Iridani's body made a sound like wind chimes. Its translation device spoke in a trembling voice. "Why? We have nothing to give you. We cannot fight. We are useless." Norton smiled gently. "You're not useless. You're alive. That's all that matters." She held out her hand. "Come with me. We're going to get you somewhere safe." Above them, the battle raged on. Human ships died and Kethrani ships died. But slowly, surely, the tide was turning. The harvesting vessels were destroyed or disabled. The enemy formation was breaking apart. Some tried to flee, but human ships chased them down. By the end of the day, the Kethrani fleet was shattered. 31 enemy ships were destroyed. 12 were captured. Only 4 managed to escape into hyperspace. The cost was high. 2 human destroyers were lost with all hands. The Valiant had taken heavy damage and lost over 100 fighters. Marines on the ground had suffered casualties that no one wanted to count yet, but the Iridani homeworld still existed. The killing had stopped, and across the surface, human soldiers were finding survivors and bringing them to safety. The galaxy had just learned what happened when someone cried for help within range of humanity's ears. The battle was over, but the work was just beginning. Admiral Catherine Cole stood on the observation deck of her flagship, the dreadnought Retribution, looking down at the wounded world below. Fires still burned in dozens of cities. The atmosphere was thick with smoke and dust. But the enemy ships were gone, and human vessels now filled the orbital space, bringing hope instead of death. The first relief ships arrived within hours of the battle's end. Medical vessels with doctors and equipment. Transport ships loaded with food and water and shelter materials. Engineering teams ready to rebuild what had been destroyed. Humanity had not just come to fight. They had come to heal. Commander Paul Fisher found the Admiral still standing at the window as the sun set over the planet's damaged surface. He carried a tablet with the latest reports. "Casualty numbers are in," he said quietly. "We lost 412 sailors in the space battle. 87 Marines on the ground. The destroyers Swift and Hammer went down with all hands." Cole closed her eyes for a moment. 412 families who would receive the worst news of their lives. 87 young soldiers who would never go home. She had known this would happen. She had ordered it anyway. "What about the Iridani?" she asked. "Estimates are still rough, but we think the Kethrani killed somewhere between 2 and 3 million before we arrived. Maybe more." Fisher paused. "But we saved the rest. Nearly 800 million Iridani are still alive because we came." Cole nodded slowly. The math was simple but terrible. Human lives traded for Iridani lives. She would spend the rest of her days wondering if she had made the right choice, and she would never find a satisfying answer. On the surface, Lieutenant Amy Norton had not slept in 36 hours. Her Marines were spread across 3 major cities, setting up refugee camps and hunting for survivors in the rubble. The work was exhausting and heartbreaking. Every building they searched contained more evidence of the horror that had unfolded here, but there were also moments of light. Families reunited after believing each other dead. Children found alive in hidden basements. Elderly Iridani who had protected young ones with their own bodies, sacrificing themselves so others could live. Norton sat down on a piece of rubble to eat a quick meal. An Iridani elder approached her, moving slowly on legs that had seen many centuries. Its crystalline body was cracked and chipped, damage that would take years to heal. "May I speak with you?" the elder asked through its translation device. Norton stood up, respecting the elder's age. "Of course. I am called Ventus. I was a teacher before the attack. Now I do not know what I am." The elder paused, its internal lights flickering with emotion. "I have a question that I must ask. Go ahead." "Why did you come?" Ventus asked. "We sent our call for help expecting nothing. We have watched the galaxy for many generations. We know how it works. The strong ignore the weak. The powerful do not risk themselves for the powerless. And yet, you came. You fought. You died. For us." The elder's voice broke. "Why?" Norton thought about the question for a long moment. It was not easy to answer. Humans had debated this for thousands of years. Why did they run toward danger? Why did they protect strangers? Why did they care about people they had never met? "Because you needed help," she finally said. "Because we could help. Because sitting safe at home while innocent people die is not something we can live with." She looked up at the smoke-filled sky. "My grandmother used to say that the true measure of a person is what they do when they have nothing to gain. We didn't come here for profit or power. We came because it was right." Ventus was silent for a long time. Then the elder bowed deeply, a gesture of respect that Eridani reserved for only the most honored individuals. "We will not forget this," Ventus said. "For as long as our people exist, we will remember what humanity did for us." In orbit, the captured Kethrani ships presented a new challenge. Nearly 2,000 enemy soldiers and crew were now prisoners, held in the brigs of human vessels. Most of them were confused and frightened. The Dominion had taught them that surrender was shameful. The capture was worse than death. They had never expected to survive a defeat. Commander Paul Fisher personally interrogated the enemy commander, a scarred veteran named Vexus. The Kethrani was a large creature, covered in thick gray plates that served as natural armor. Its eyes were small and dark, watching Fisher with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Tell me about the Dominion," Fisher said. "Why did you attack the Eridani?" Vexus made a grinding sound that might have been laughter. "Because they were easy prey. Because their bodies contain minerals that we need. Because they could not stop us." The Kethrani leaned forward. "This is the way of the universe. The strong take from the weak. Your kind should understand this. You are predators. I can see it in your eyes." Fisher nodded slowly. "You're right. We are predators. Humans evolved on a death world, surrounded by things that wanted to kill us. We learned to fight before we learned almost anything else. Then you should understand why we did what we did." "I understand it," Fisher said. "I don't accept it." He stood up and walked around the table. "You see, we learned something else on our death world. We learned that working together makes us stronger than working alone. We learned that protecting each other is how we survive. We learned that the pack is more important than the individual." He stopped and looked directly at Vexus. "The Eridani are pack now. They're under our protection, and anyone who threatens them threatens us." Vexus stared at him for a long moment. "You would go to war for creatures you just met? Creatures who give you nothing in return?" "We already did," Fisher said. "And we'll do it again if we have to." The word spread across the galaxy faster than any official communication could travel. Traders carried the news to distant stations. Diplomats whispered it in assembly halls. Scientists analyzed the battle data with growing amazement. Humanity had not just answered a distress call. They had appeared in overwhelming force within hours. They had fought with a ferocity that shocked veteran military observers. They had taken massive casualties without hesitation or retreat. And when the battle was over, they had stayed to help rebuild. On the Sar Prime, Ambassador Corvus watched the reports come in and felt something strange growing in his heart. It took him a while to identify the emotion. It was hope. For centuries, the galaxy had operated on simple principles. The strong dominated the weak. The powerful exploited the powerless. Species looked out for themselves and no one else. It was not cruelty, exactly. It was simply the way things worked. But now, there was a new factor in the equation. A species that refused to accept those rules. A species that would fight and die for strangers. A species that saw the suffering of others and felt compelled to act. Corvus began drafting a report to his government. His recommendation was simple. The Villani should seek an alliance with humanity. Not because humans were strong, although they were. Not because humans were useful, although they were that too. Because humanity was good. It was a strange thing to say about a species from a death world. A species that had spent most of their history fighting each other. A species that carried violence in their blood and fire in their hearts. But it was true. And Corvus finally understood why. Humans did not protect the weak because it was logical. They did not save strangers because it was profitable. They did it because something deep inside them demanded it. Something that no other species in the galaxy possessed in quite the same way. They called it conscience. They called it honor. They called it duty. Whatever name it went by, it was real, and it was powerful, and it was changing the galaxy forever. 3 months passed since the Battle of Eridani, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Kethrani Dominion had retreated to their home systems. Their fleet was shattered, their prisoners still held by human forces, their reputation destroyed. For generations, they have been feared throughout the outer territories. Now species that had once trembled at the mention of their name were openly discussing resistance. The Dominion's power had been built on terror, and humans had shown that terror could be broken. 4 other aggressive factions in different parts of the galaxy quietly ended their military operations in the weeks following the battle. They gave various reasons: economic concerns, internal politics, strategic repositioning. But everyone knew the truth. They had seen what happened to the Kethrani, and they wanted no part of it. The Eridani homeworld was slowly healing. Human engineers had rebuilt the power systems and water treatment facilities. Human doctors had treated the wounded and established permanent medical centers. Human ships still patrolled the system, making sure no one would threaten the Eridani again. The crystalline people had begun the long process of rebuilding their society. It would take generations to fully recover from the trauma. Millions were dead. Cities lay in ruins. The psychological wounds were even deeper than the physical ones, but they were alive. They had a future, and they knew exactly who to thank for it. The Galactic Assembly finally convened to address the human question. The Great Hall on the Sara Prime was filled with delegates from over 100 species. This was the largest gathering in decades, and everyone understood that history was about to change. Ambassador Corvus sat in the Villani section, watching the proceedings with careful attention. He had spent the last 3 months building support for his proposal. Many species were skeptical. Some were openly hostile. But the evidence was overwhelming, and even the most stubborn delegates were finding it hard to argue. Admiral Catherine Cole represented humanity at the assembly. She wore her dress uniform with the medals and ribbons she had earned over 30 years of service. Beside her sat Captain Daniel Brooks and Lieutenant Amy Norton, the captain who had first answered the call, the soldier who had first reached the survivors on the ground. The assembly speaker, a tall being from a species that had no gender, called the session to order. His voice echoed through the vast chamber. We are gathered to discuss the events in the Eridani system and their implications for galactic governance. The human military forces took unilateral action without assembly approval. They engaged in combat operations that resulted in significant casualties. They have since maintained a military presence in a system that is not part of their territory. The speaker paused, consulting a document. These actions would normally be grounds for censure or sanctions. However, the circumstances are unusual. The Eridani have formally requested that no action be taken against humanity. Additionally, the affected parties, the Kethrani Dominion have not filed any formal complaints. A murmur ran through the hall. The Kethrani not filing a complaint was remarkable. It meant they knew they were in the wrong, even by their own standards. The speaker continued. Before we proceed, the Iridani delegation has requested permission to address the assembly. From the crystalline section of the hall, a figure rose. It was Ventus, the elder who had spoken with Lieutenant Norton in the ruins of a city. The old Iridani moved slowly to the central podium, its body still bearing the damage from the attack. When Ventus spoke, the translation carried its words to every ear in the chamber. Honored delegates, I speak for a people who should not exist. 3 months ago, we were dying. Our world was burning. Our children were being harvested like crops. We called for help, but we expected no answer. We had accepted our extinction. Ventus paused, its internal lights pulsing with emotion. Then the humans came. Not a diplomatic mission, not a committee to assess the situation. A fleet. Warriors who had never met us, who owed us nothing, who had everything to lose and nothing to gain. They came anyway. They fought. They bled. They died. The elder turned to look directly at Admiral Cole. I am told that some here believe humans should be punished for what they did, that they violated protocols and procedures, that they acted without proper authority. Ventus made a sound like crystal striking crystal. My people are alive because humans did not wait for permission to save us. If following your rules means watching innocent people die, then your rules are wrong. The chamber fell silent. No one had ever spoken to the assembly with such directness. Ventus continued. Humans are not like us. They come from a world of death and violence. They carry war in their blood, but they also carry something else. Something I have never seen in any other species. They have the strength to destroy, but they choose to protect. They have the power to conquer, but they use it to liberate. They are the most dangerous people in the galaxy, and they are also the most noble. The elder bowed deeply toward the human delegation. The Iridani will never forget what humanity did for us. We will stand with them always. We will be their friends, their allies, their family. And we will pray to whatever gods exist that the rest of the galaxy learns to see what we have seen. Ventus returned to its seat. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Ambassador Corvith stood. I move that humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Assembly, with all rights and responsibilities therein. The debate that followed was shorter than anyone expected. 40 species spoke in favor of the motion. Only 7 spoke against. When the vote was called, it passed with the largest majority in Assembly history. Admiral Cole rose to accept the honor. Her voice was steady, but those who knew her could see the emotion in her eyes. On behalf of humanity, I thank you for this recognition. But I want to be clear about something. We did not come to the Iridani system for status or power. We came because people were dying and we could help. That is who we are. That is who we will always be. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes with delegates from species that had dismissed humanity as primitives just months ago. We are not perfect. We have made terrible mistakes in our history. We have hurt each other and ourselves in ways that still shame us. But we have also learned from those mistakes. We have learned that strength without mercy is just cruelty. We have learned that power without responsibility is just tyranny. And we have learned that no one, no matter how weak or far away, deserves to face evil alone. Cole paused. The galaxy is watching us now. They want to know what humanity will do with this new position. Here is my answer. We will do what we have always done. We will stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves. We will fight for those who cannot fight back. We will answer when someone cries for help, no matter who they are or where they come from. She smiled, and there was something fierce in it. That is the human way. And if the galaxy learns nothing else from us, I hope they learn that. Later that evening, aboard the Retribution, as it prepared to jump back to Earth, Commander Paul Fisher found the Admiral on the observation deck again. She was watching the stars, her expression thoughtful. "That was quite a speech," he said. Cole shrugged. "It was the truth. I just hope we can live up to it." "We will," Fisher said. "We always do. That's the thing about humans. We're terrible at a lot of things, but we're good at being stubborn. Once we decide something matters, we don't let go." Cole nodded. Outside the window, the fleet was forming up for the jump home. Valiant and Ironclad and Constellation and all the others. Ships that had fought together and would fight together again if needed. "My grandmother used to tell me stories," Cole said quietly, "about the old days on Earth, how people would run toward fires to save strangers, how they would dive into rivers to rescue drowning children, how they would stand in front of bullets to protect people they had never met." She turned to face Fisher. "I always wondered if those stories were true. Now I know they were. They're still true. They'll always be true. As long as there are humans in the galaxy, there will be someone willing to fight for the innocent." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind a galaxy that had finally learned the truth about humanity. They were Deathworlders. They were predators. They were the most dangerous species in known space, and they were also the best friends anyone could ever have. Because humans don't send thoughts and prayers when innocents are screaming. They send fleets.